Hashtag humans arrive with a fleet, the Empire freezes. The void of space stretched out before Praetor Malachor, a vast canvas of perfect order. From the command bridge of the Guardian Axiom, he observed the stars with cold satisfaction. Each one catalogued, each one part of the grand design of the Vastirian Empire. For 10,000 years, the Empire had expanded across the galaxy, bringing unity and perfection to countless worlds. What had once been a chaotic universe was now a symphony of efficiency, all life serving its optimal function within the great uniformity. Status report. Malachor commanded, his voice as measured and precise as the Empire itself. All systems optimal, Praetor, replied his second-in-command. Border Patrol proceeding according to established protocols. No anomalies detected in sectors 17 through 42. Malachor nodded approvingly. The border regions required constant vigilance, though it had been centuries since any true threat had presented itself to the Empire. Most species encountered were primitive, easily assimilated into the greater whole. Their biological and technological distinctiveness added to the Empire's perfection. Praetor, the calm of the bridge was suddenly broken by an urgent call from the sensor station. Unknown energy signatures detected in Sector 19. Multiple vessels emerging from what appears to be some form of faster-than-light travel. Malachor frowned. Classification: unknown, sir. The signatures do not match any species in our database. The configuration is chaotic, non-standard. Malachor moved swiftly to the sensor station, his tall, angular form casting a shadow over the operator. The display showed multiple vessels of varying sizes and shapes, emerging into normal space in what appeared to be a loose formation. A new species, he said, his voice betraying the slightest hint of interest. How fascinating. And an opportunity. Establish contact protocols. Prepare preliminary assimilation scans. As the Vastirian ship adjusted its course to intercept the newcomers, Malachor contemplated how these beings would best serve the Empire. Every new species was a resource to be optimized, their strengths incorporated, their flaws eliminated. It was the way of progress, the path to perfection. The anomaly requires correction, he said to himself, as all things must be. Captain Alara Vance stood on the bridge of the UEF Daedalus, flagship of Earth's Expeditionary Fleet 3. The jump had been successful. All 16 vessels had emerged into normal space intact and in formation. After 3 years of deep space exploration, they had finally reached their destination, a sector showing signs of advanced civilization. All ships reporting in, Captain, said Commander Kenji Tanaka, her tactical officer. Minor fluctuations in the shield harmonics on the Theseus, but they're stabilizing now. Vance nodded. Have them run a level 2 diagnostic just to be safe. We're a long way from home. Already ordered, Captain, replied Tanaka with a slight smile. He knew the captain's protocols by heart after serving with her for 5 years. Captain, called out Lieutenant Park from the sensor station. Large vessel detected at bearing 047 Mark 132. It's massive, at least 3 times our size, and the design is unlike anything we've encountered. Vance turned to the main view screen as it displayed the approaching ship. Its design was striking, geometrically perfect, with angular lines and symmetry patterns that seemed to follow some alien mathematical principle. It radiated power and precision. Opinion, Oracle? Vance asked, addressing the ship's advanced tactical AI. A holographic display materialized beside her, showing a human-like interface that Oracle used for communication. The vessel demonstrates technological sophistication at least equivalent to our own, Captain, Oracle stated, its voice calm and analytical. Power readings suggest significant offensive and defensive capabilities. Design aesthetics indicate a culture that values order and efficiency above all else. I detect multiple scanning beams being directed at our fleet. Hostile? Vance asked. Indeterminate. The scans are intensive, but not weapons grade. I would characterize them as curious, but presumptuous. Vance smiled slightly at the AI's choice of words. Oracle had been programmed with personality matrices that sometimes gave its analyses a distinctly human touch. Dr. Thorne, Vance called to her chief science officer. What can you tell me about those scans? Dr. Eris Thorne, a tall woman with silver-streaked dark hair and intense eyes, studied her console intently. They're attempting to penetrate our shields, Captain. The pattern suggests they're trying to gather detailed information about our ships, technology, even our biological composition. I'd recommend raising our electromagnetic interference fields. Vance considered this. First contact scenarios were always delicate, too defensive, and they might appear hostile, too open, and they might appear vulnerable. Minimal interference only, she decided. Enough to protect sensitive areas, but let's show some goodwill. Hail them. Incoming transmission, Captain, the communications officer announced before they could send their own. They're hailing us. On screen, Vance ordered, straightening her uniform. The view screen changed to show a humanoid figure with pale, almost translucent skin stretched over sharp, angular features. When he spoke, his mouth barely moved, giving the impression of a statue coming reluctantly to life. Unidentified vessels. This is Praetor Malachur of the Vastirian Empire Border Patrol ship Guardian Axiom. You have entered Imperial space. Identify yourselves and prepare for preliminary reception protocols. Vance stepped forward. I am Captain Alara Vance of the United Earth Federation starship Daedalus. We come in peace as explorers and potential allies. We respectfully request information exchange on equal terms. The alien's expression remained impassive, but something like surprise flickered in his eyes. Equal terms? An interesting concept from one so newly arrived. The Vastirian Empire has brought order to this galaxy for 10,000 years. All species benefit from our guidance and eventual integration into the Great Uniformity. Prepare your vessels for comprehensive scanning and classification. Vance tensed. With respect, Praetor, we have not agreed to such scans. We propose instead an exchange of diplomatic envoys to learn about each other's cultures and capabilities. Malachur's expression hardened. Your agreement is not required, Captain Vance. Is the way of things. All new species must be properly categorized before determining their optimal place within the Empire. I'm afraid that's not acceptable, Vance replied firmly. We are an independent species with our own sovereignty. We request that you respect our boundaries. Your sovereignty is a temporary state, Captain, a phase of development that all species pass through before enlightenment. Malachur made a gesture to someone off-screen. Since you appear confused about proper protocol, I will demonstrate. Guardian Axiom, initiate four-scan sequence. Vance didn't hesitate. Shields up. All ships, defensive pattern Delta. No weapons hot, but be prepared. As the massive Vastirian ship directed intense energy beams toward the Earth fleet, Vance couldn't help but think that humanity's latest first contact was following the same unfortunate pattern as their previous encounters. Despite their hopes for peaceful exchange, the galaxy seemed determined to test their resolve once again. The Guardian Axiom's scanning beams lanced out toward the human fleet, expecting to easily penetrate their defenses. But something unexpected happened. Instead of hitting their targets directly, the beams encountered shifting electromagnetic fields that bent and redirected them. Some beams struck only empty space where a ship had been moments before, the vessel having made a micro-jump to a slightly different position. Others found themselves absorbed by localized energy sinks that flared briefly and then dissipated. On the Vastirian command bridge, confusion spread as technicians reported failures across multiple scanning systems. Impossible, one operator stated. Their defensive measures are adapting in real time. The scanning patterns cannot establish lock. Malachur watched with growing interest as the human ships executed a complex dance of evasive maneuvers. Unlike the regimented, predictable defensive formations of other species the Empire had encountered, these humans moved in seemingly chaotic patterns that nevertheless displayed an underlying coordination. Fascinating, he murmured. They operate as independent units, yet function collectively. Increase scanning power. Deploy secondary arrays. Additional scanning beams emerge from the Guardian Axiom, more concentrated and powerful than before. This time, several penetrated the outer defenses of the smaller human vessels, though the flagship Daedalus remained largely protected. Partial scan data incoming, Pretor, reported the science officer. Their technology is unusual. We're detecting artificial intelligence nodes distributed throughout their fleet, linking their systems in ways our protocols cannot fully map. Malachur studied the fragmentary data with growing concern. These humans were different from other species the Empire had encountered. Their technology wasn't fundamentally more advanced, but it followed design principles that seemed almost contrary to Vasterian logic, embracing adaptation and decentralization rather than perfect optimization and control. A challenge, then, he decided, but one we shall overcome. All new species are eventually integrated. These humans will be no different. He turned to his communications. Officer, open a channel to their commander. Captain Vance's face appeared on the screen, composed but alert. Captain Vance, Malachur began, his tone modulated to project reasonableness. Your defensive capabilities are noteworthy. Perhaps we have begun our relationship from an incorrect premise. I propose a face-to-face meeting to discuss your species' position within the galactic community. The administrative station Nexus 7 would provide a neutral setting for such discussions. Vance's expression revealed nothing. An interesting proposal, Pretor. May I ask what would be the agenda for such a meeting? Cultural exchange, diplomatic formalities, a proper introduction to the Empire and its beneficence. Malachur smiled thinly. Surely such knowledge would be valuable to explorers such as yourselves. Indeed it would, Vance replied carefully. Allow me to consult with my officers. I'll respond shortly. As the communication ended, Malachur turned to his second-in-command. Prepare a full security detail for Nexus 7. Alert Sub-Overseer Lyra that we will be bringing specimens of significant interest, and dispatch a coded message to Fleet Command. We may require additional resources to properly welcome these humans to the Empire. In the secure conference room aboard the Daedalus, Captain Vance met with her senior staff to discuss the Vasterian proposal. It's a trap, Commander Tanaka stated bluntly. Their scans, their demands for compliance. They've shown no respect for our boundaries. This meeting will be no different. Agreed, said Oracle, its holographic form projecting over the conference table. I calculate a 78.3% probability that the Pretor intends to gather more detailed intelligence on our capabilities, and a 62.7% probability of attempted capture or coercion. Dr. Thorne leaned forward, her expression serious. What concerns me most is what I've been able to determine from the partial scan data they managed to collect. The Vasterians appear to be a biomechanical species, organic beings extensively augmented with technology. But more worrying is the uniformity in their neural patterns. The few crew members we detected on their ship showed almost identical brain wave patterns. As if what, Doctor? Vance prompted. As if they'd been standardized somehow. Individualized, thought patterns suppressed or regulated. This great uniformity Malachur mentioned may be more literal than we assumed. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. So if they don't just want to meet us, Lieutenant Park said slowly. They want to assimilate us. Make us like them. That would align with their technological approach, Oracle added. Their systems show perfect efficiency but limited adaptation. They optimize toward a single ideal rather than embracing diversity of function. Vance stood and paced the length of the conference table. Despite the risks, I believe we should accept this meeting. Surprised looks greeted her declaration. Captain, Tanaka began, given what we've just discussed. Precisely because of what we've discussed, Vance interrupted. We need more information about these Vasterians. Their technology, their culture, their vulnerabilities. We can't make informed decisions without better intelligence. And if it is a trap? Asked Thorne. Vance smiled grimly. Then we spring it on our terms. Oracle, Begin formulating contingency plans for various scenarios. Dr. Thorne, I need you to prepare something special, a response to any attempt at capture or coercion. Thorne nodded thoughtfully. I've been working on adapting our quantum field stabilizers for defensive applications. With some modifications, they could create localized disruptions in their communication and power systems. Good. Commander Tanaka, you'll be in command while I'm gone. If we don't return on schedule, or if communications are cut, you're authorized to implement Protocol Umbra. Tanaka's eyes widened slightly. Protocol Umbra was their most aggressive defensive strategy, designed for worst-case scenarios. Understood, Captain, but I strongly recommend taking a security detail with you. A small one only, Vance replied. We don't want to appear overtly hostile. For security officers, Dr. Thorne and myself. And me, Oracle added. A portable projection matrix would allow me to accompany you without their knowledge. I can analyze their systems in real time and provide tactical advice through your secure comms. Vance nodded. Make it happen. Let's show these Vasterians that humans are willing to talk, but we're nobody's specimens. The human shuttle approached Nexus 7, flanked by 2 Vasterian escort vessels. Through the viewports, Vance and her team got their first close look at a major Vasterian installation. Nexus 7 was a massive structure that defied easy classification. Part space station, part living organism. Its core consisted of geometric, metallic structures, perfect in their symmetry, but these were surrounded by what appeared to be grown rather than constructed components, translucent membranes, and organic-looking conduits that pulsed with energy. Remarkable, Dr. Thorne whispered, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her concerns. They've integrated biological and mechanical systems at a fundamental level. The station itself appears to be partially alive. Alive, but not living. Oracle's voice murmured through their secure earpieces. The AI's projection matrix remained deactivated to avoid detection. I'm detecting minimal biological variation throughout the structure. It's as if they've engineered all randomness out of the organic components. As the shuttle docked with perfect precision to a connection port, Vance addressed her team one final time. Remember your training. Observe everything, reveal nothing critical. Dr. Thorne, keep your special equipment concealed until absolutely necessary. The airlock cycled open to reveal 2 Vasterian guards waiting to escort them. Like Malachur, they had pale, almost translucent skin and angular features, but their bodies showed more extensive technological integration, visible circuitry beneath their skin and mechanical enhancements at their joints. Their eyes, unervingly identical in color and pattern, regarded the humans without expression. Follow, one stated simply, no introductions, no diplomatic pleasantries. As they were led through the station, Vance noted the eerie efficiency of everything around them. Other Vasterians moved through the corridors with precise, measured steps, never hurrying, never pausing. They acknowledged each other with minimal gestures, speaking rarely, and then only in short, information-dense exchanges. There was no laughter, no casual conversation, no arguments, just the silent hum of perfect functionality. They move like components in a machine, Lieutenant Reeves, one of the security officers, whispered. Because that's exactly what they are, Dr. Thorne replied quietly. Look at their eyes, the same vacant focus, the same programmed purpose. The group was led into a large chamber dominated by a circular platform surrounded by various technological interfaces. The design was elegant in its simplicity, with clean lines and perfect symmetry. Standing on the platform was a Vasterian female, taller than their escorts, and wearing a form-fitting uniform adorned with complex circuitry patterns that seemed to pulse with her breathing. I am Sub-Overseer Lyra, she announced, her voice melodious yet somehow mechanical. Administrator of Nexus 7 and representative of the Vasterian Empire. You are Captain Ilera Vance of Earth. It wasn't a question, but Vance nodded. Yes. Thank you for hosting us, Sub-Overseer. This is Dr. Eris Thorne, our Chief Science Officer and security personnel. Lyra barely glanced at the others. Your presence is noted. She gestured to the platform. Please join me. There is much to discuss about your future within the Empire. Vance and her team stepped onto the platform, maintaining a cautious distance from Lyra. As they did, holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing various star systems, alien species, and what appear to be historical records of the Vastirian Empire's expansion. For 10,000 years, Lyra began, the Empire has brought order to chaos, purpose to randomness, efficiency to waste. Where once 1,000 species fought in primitive conflict, now a unified civilization advances toward perfection. The displays showed worlds being transformed, chaotic, diverse ecosystems replaced by ordered, regulated environments. Cities rebuilt with perfect geometric precision. Alien beings undergoing what appeared to be extensive modification. The great uniformity is our highest achievement, Lyra continued. The understanding that true advancement comes only through the surrender of destructive individuality to become part of a greater whole. You mean the surrender of free will, Vance stated. Lyra tilted her head slightly, as if confused by the concept. Free will is inefficient, Captain. It leads to conflict, to waste, to suffering. In the great uniformity, each being serves its optimal function. No confusion, no doubt, no pain of choice. And who decides this optimal function? Dr. Thorne asked. The Empire's algorithms are perfected through millennia of development. They analyze each species' biological and technological attributes to determine ideal integration pathways. Integration, Vance repeated. You mean assimilation? Forcing other species to become like you. Not force, Captain. Enlightenment. Lyra's expression softened into something resembling benevolence. Your species has been granted a rare honor. Based on preliminary scans, humans possess remarkable adaptive capabilities and technological innovation. Your integration will not be at the lowest tiers, as, with many primitive species, you will serve important functions within the Empire, particularly once your disruptive tendencies toward individuality are corrected. Vance felt a chill run down her spine at the casual way Lyra spoke of rewriting human nature. And if we decline this honor, for the first time, Lyra's perfect composure faltered slightly. Decline? That concept does not apply. The great uniformity is inevitable. It is the natural progression of all intelligent life. Your temporary resistance is merely a developmental phase. We see it differently, Vance replied firmly. Humanity values diversity, freedom of choice, and self-determination. We're interested in peaceful exchange and cooperation with the Vastirian Empire, but we will not surrender our autonomy. Lyra studied Vance with a mixture of confusion and pity. You speak from ignorance. Allow me to demonstrate the benefits of our way. She raised her hands, and the chamber around them transformed. Walls shifted position, energy conduits rerouted, and the very floor beneath them reconfigured into a different pattern. It was as if the entire room was a single organism responding instantly to Lyra's commands. Perfect control, perfect harmony, Lyra said, a note of pride entering her voice. Every molecule, every energy pathway, responding as extensions of unified will. This is what awaits humanity, to become part of something greater than your limited individual selves. Dr. Thorne had been quietly scanning the demonstration with concealed instruments. She caught Vance's eye and gave a subtle nod. They had what they needed. An impressive display, Vance acknowledged, but not one that changes our position. Humanity chooses to remain independent. Lyra's expression hardened. There is no independence from the Empire, only temporary delay of the inevitable. Your resistance is. She was interrupted as Dr. Thorne discreetly activated a small device in her palm. A brief pulse of energy radiated outward, invisible to the naked eye, but targeting the specific frequencies used by Vastirian control systems that Thorne had identified during Lyra's demonstration. The effect was immediate but limited. The holographic displays flickered. A section of the wall that had previously morphed smoothly now jerked erratically. Energy conduits pulsed with sudden irregularity. Lyra's reaction was instantaneous. Her eyes widened in genuine shock, then narrowed in cold fury. Sabotage, she hissed, the word laden with more emotion than anything she'd expressed previously. Security forces materialized from concealed entrances, surrounding the human delegation with weapons drawn. "You have committed an act of aggression against the Empire," Lyra stated, her voice now harsh and mechanical. "You will be separated, analyzed, and processed for appropriate corrective measures." As the security forces closed in, Vance managed to activate her emergency beacon, sending a coded signal to the Deadless. Then strong hands seized her arms, and she felt the sting of an injector against her neck. Her last conscious thought was of Commander Tanaka and what orders he would now be carrying out. Commander Kenji Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Deadless, his posture rigid as he stared at the emergency signal flashing on the tactical display. "Signal confirmed," announced the communications officer. "Emergency Protocol Alpha. The captain's team has been compromised." Tanaka's expression remained calm, but those who knew him well could see the controlled fury in his eyes. "Time to extraction point." "Negative on extraction, Commander," Oracle's holographic form reported. The signal was cut off after initial transmission. "I detect no follow-up coordinates or status updates." "They've been captured," Tanaka stated flatly. "That is the most probable scenario," Oracle confirmed. "Additionally, I'm detecting multiple Vasterian vessels moving to surround our fleet. The Guardian Axiom is on approach vector." On screen, Tanaka ordered. The main view screen showed the massive Vasterian ship advancing toward them, now accompanied by 3 additional vessels of similar design that had emerged from deeper within the system. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer. Peter Malaker's face appeared on screen, his expression one of cold satisfaction. "Commander Tanaka, I presume your captain has committed a regrettable offense against the Empire. However, the Vasterian Empire is not without mercy. Surrender your fleet immediately, and your people will be treated with leniency during the integration process." "What have you done with Captain Vance and her team?" Tanaka demanded. "They are being processed for preliminary integration assessment. Their resistance has necessitated certain adjustments to standard protocols, but they will not be permanently damaged. Their core cognitive functions will be preserved, though disruptive emotional patterns will require correction." "That's not acceptable," Tanaka replied, his voice deceptively soft. "Return our people immediately." Malaker's expression hardened. "You misunderstand, Commander. This is not a negotiation. It is an opportunity for surrender with minimal consequences. The alternative would be unfortunate for your species." Tanaka glanced at Oracle, who nodded imperceptibly. The AI had already initiated the predetermined contingency plan. "We'll need time to consider your generous offer, Pretor," Tanaka said, infusing his voice with a hint of uncertainty. "Our command structure requires consultation among ship captains before such a significant decision." Malaker smiled thinly. "A primitive and inefficient approach to decision-making, but I will allow it. You have 1 standard hour. After that, we will begin disabling your vessels one by one until compliance is achieved." As the transmission ended, Tanaka turned to his tactical officer. "Status of operation stasis? Probe deployment in progress, Commander. 23% of targets covered. Estimated time to optimal positioning, 48 minutes. Accelerate deployment. Use the fighter squadrons to run interference if necessary. That will expose them to Vasterian fire," the tactical officer cautioned. "I'm aware," Tanaka replied grimly. "But those are unmanned drones. Launch them in waves. Make it look like we're preparing for defensive action rather than deploying the stasis probes." Oracle's holographic form expanded to display a tactical overview of the developing situation. The Vasterian vessels are moving into a standard containment formation. Their tactical approach is predictable, efficient, but lacking imagination. "Good," Tanaka said. "That makes our job easier. Begin evasive pattern Echo 7. Make it look desperate, not coordinated. I want them focused on our apparent defensive maneuvers, not on what we're really doing." As the Daedalus and the other Earth ships began a series of seemingly chaotic evasive actions, the Vasterian vessels responded exactly as predicted, tightening their formation to prevent escape, focusing their attention on the larger ships and fighter drones that appeared to be preparing for combat. "They're taking the bait," reported the tactical officer. "Vasterian targeting systems are locked on our defensive systems and propulsion. They haven't detected the stasis probes." "Probe deployment at 67%, Oracle announced. "Optimal positioning in 17 minutes. The Vasterian ships began firing warning shots, precision energy beams that deliberately missed the Earth vessels but demonstrated their superior range and power. "Incoming transmission from the Guardian Axiom," reported the communications officer. "Ignore it," Tanaka ordered. "Let them think we're in disarray, arguing about surrender." For the next 15 minutes, the delicate dance continued. Earth ships performed increasingly erratic maneuvers while appearing to try to maintain some semblance of formation. Fighter drones launched in seemingly desperate waves, only to be easily neutralized by Vasterian defensive fire. All the while, the tiny stasis probes, each no larger than a human hand, continued their silent deployment to key positions around the Vasterian fleet. "Probe deployment complete," Oracle finally announced. "All Vasterian vessels within optimal stasis field projection range." Tanaka took a deep breath. "Initiate final targeting sequence. All ships, prepare for potential shockwave displacement." "Warning," Oracle interrupted. "The Guardian Axiom is powering weapons to full capacity. They appear to be preparing to disable the Daedalus. Time to stasis activation, 43 seconds." Tanaka's expression remained calm. "Hold position. Let them think they've won." The massive Vasterian flagship oriented toward the Daedalus, its primary weapon array glowing with gathering energy. 20 seconds to stasis activation, Oracle counted down. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer reported urgently. "Ignore it," Tanaka repeated. 10 seconds. The Guardian Axiom's weapons reached full power, aimed directly at the Daedalus. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. "Activate stasis," Tanaka commanded. For a brief moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a strange visual distortion spread outward from each of the hidden probes. Not an explosion, not a visible energy field, but a subtle warping of space itself. Where these distortions touched Vasterian ships, an extraordinary effect occurred. Energy beams paused mid-emission. Lights neither dimmed nor continued their normal patterns, but simply stopped. Movements halted. The ships themselves didn't drift or tumble, but remained perfectly motionless, as if time itself had been selectively paused. On the bridge of the Daedalus, a stunned silence fell as the crew witnessed the effect of their most closely guarded technological secret, Operation Stasis, the ability to create localized quantum-locked fields that temporarily suspended all atomic and subatomic movement within their radius. Not destruction, not damage, but perfect stasis. "Status report," Tanaka finally ordered, his voice quiet in the silence. "Stasis fields stable and maintaining cohesion," reported the tactical officer in disbelief. "All targeted Vasterian vessels show 0 energy readings, 0 movement. They're completely frozen." "Life signs?" Tanaka asked. Oracle projected a detailed analysis. "Biological functions within the affected vessels are also in stasis. The crew are effectively in suspended animation, conscious but unable to move or take action. Their thought processes continue, but they cannot translate to physical action." "Can they communicate with other Vasterian forces?" "Negative. All transmission capabilities are suspended." Tanaka allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Good. Now we negotiate from strength. Prepare a rescue team for immediate deployment to Nexus 7. Dr. Thorne's scans should give us the information we need to penetrate their security systems." As the Earth fleet held position around the frozen Vasterian ships, Tanaka gazed at the massive, motionless form of the Guardian Axiom. "I think it's time we taught the Empire about the benefits of diversity," he said quietly. Captain Vance woke to find herself in a sterile white chamber. She was restrained on what appeared to be an examination table, surrounded by Vasterian medical equipment. Her uniform had been replaced with a simple gray garment, and she could feel small devices attached to her temples and the base of her skull. Attempting to move proved futile. The restraints were solid and unyielding. But her mind was clear, which surprised her. She had expected to be drugged or mentally impaired in some way. "Your neural patterns are fascinating, Captain Vance." The voice came from Lyra, who entered the chamber with two Vasterian medical technicians. She approached Vance's table, studying readouts on a holographic display that hovered beside it. Such inefficient pathways, yet capable of remarkable adaptive cognition. Your species' brains prioritize creativity over efficiency, individuality over uniformity. A developmental abnormality that we will correct, of course, but interesting nonetheless. "Where are my people?" Vance demanded. "Being similarly analyzed," Lyra replied casually. "Dr. Thorne has proven especially resistant to preliminary neural mapping. Her mind contains unusual barriers, artificial constructs designed to compartmentalize information. Primitive, but troublesome." Vance felt a surge of pride. Thorne had undergone specialized mental training specifically to protect critical information in the event of capture. It seemed to be working. "The others will be processed according to standard protocols," Lyra continued. "But you, Captain, will receive special attention. Your leadership capabilities and decision-making algorithms have potential utility to the Empire if properly reconfigured." "It won't work," Vance stated flatly. "Human consciousness resists that kind of control. Our history is filled with failed attempts at thought manipulation." Lyra smiled faintly. "By human standards, perhaps. But the Empire has perfected these techniques across thousands of species. The process is not quick, nor is it painless, but it is inevitable." She made a gesture, and one of the technicians adjusted something on the devices attached to Vance's head. Immediately, Vance felt a strange sensation, as if portions of her mind were being systematically examined, like files in a database. "We begin with mapping," Lyra explained, "identifying neural pathways associated with resistance, individuality, emotional attachment. These are the first to be reconfigured." Vance fought against the intrusion, using mental focusing techniques taught in captivity resistance training. "My crew will come for us. They will try," Lyra acknowledged, "and they will fail. Even now, your fleet is being surrounded by superior Vasterian forces. They will surrender or be disabled. Either way, humanity will join the Great Uniformity." Before Lyra could continue, an alarm sounded throughout the facility. The Vasterian administrator frowned, touching a communication device embedded in her wrist. "Status report," she demanded. The response was audible only to her, but Vance could see her expression change from confusion to disbelief to something approaching fear. "Impossible," Lyra whispered. "Confirm visual." Another pause as she received information. Her face paled further. "Sub-overseer," one of the technicians questioned. Lyra ignored him, still focused on whatever communication she was receiving. "Isolate the effect. Determine the mechanism." Another pause. "No countermeasures available?" "Unacceptable." She suddenly seemed to remember Vance's presence and composed herself with visible effort. "Continue the procedure," she ordered the technicians. "I am needed elsewhere." As Lyra hurried from the chamber, Vance couldn't help a small smile despite her situation. Whatever was happening had clearly shaken the Vasterian administrator's perfect composure. And that could only mean one thing. Her crew had implemented Protocol Umbra. Less than 10 minutes later, the chamber door slid open again. Instead of Lyra or the technicians, however, 3 figures in Earth Fleet tactical gear entered, weapons raised. "Captain Vance," the lead figure said, removing his helmet to reveal Lieutenant Reed, one of her security officers. "Ready for extraction, ma'am." "Perfect timing, Lieutenant," Vance replied as the rescue team quickly disabled the restraints and removed the neural devices. "Status report?" "Commander Tanaka sends his regards, Captain," Reed said with a small grin as he helped her to her feet. Operation Stasis was a complete success. The entire Vasterian fleet is currently taking a timeout, and my team, Dr. Thorne and the others, are being extracted simultaneously. Dr. Thorne is apparently giving her rescuers a detailed scientific analysis of Vasterian neural mapping techniques, even as they're escaping. Vance laughed despite the situation. That sounds like Thorne. Get me to a communication terminal. I need to speak with Preetor Malachur while he's in a listening mood. On the bridge of the Guardian Axiom, Preetor Malachur experienced something entirely new to his 10,000 years of existence: complete and utter helplessness. His mind functioned perfectly. He could think, reason, even feel emotions, primarily rage and disbelief. But he could not move. Not a finger, not an eyelid. His entire ship, his crew, even the energy beams from their weapons, all frozen in perfect stasis. Through the immobile view screen before him, he could see the human vessels moving freely, unaffected by whatever impossible technology had ensnared his fleet. It defied all principles of Vasterian science. Matter could not simply be paused in such a state without massive energy expenditure or total molecular destruction. Yet here they were, consciousness trapped in motionless bodies. When the communication system suddenly activated, the only thing apparently permitted to function, Malachur would have started in surprise had his body been capable of it. "Preetor Malachur," came Captain Vance's voice. "I trust one have your attention." Unable to respond verbally, Malachur could only listen as the human captain continued. "Your ships are currently held in what we call a stasis field. It's a temporary condition that suspends all molecular motion without causing harm. Your minds are active, but your bodies and technology are paused. We can maintain this state for approximately 72 hours before our power reserves require regeneration." A view screen activated, showing Captain Vance on what appeared to be the Nexus 7 command center. Behind her stood Sub-Overseer Lyra, similarly frozen in mid-motion. "I've taken the liberty of establishing a direct link to your communication systems," Vance explained. "I know you can hear me, though you cannot respond. So I'll be clear about our terms." She stepped closer to the camera, her expression resolute. "The United Earth Federation recognizes the Vasterian Empire's long history and significant technological achievements. We have no interest in conflict. However, we categorically reject any attempt at assimilation or subjugation. Humanity will determine its own path." She gestured, and the view changed to show Vasterian ships suspended in space. "As you can see, our stasis technology gives us a significant tactical advantage. We could, if we chose, leave your fleet frozen while we disabled your weapons systems, or worse. But that's not our way. Instead, I propose the following." Vance outlined a series of points, counting them off on her fingers. 1. The Vasterian Empire will acknowledge humanity's independence and sovereignty. 2. A demilitarized zone will be established between our territories, with agreed-upon protocols for any future contact. 3. All attempts at forced scanning, assimilation, or integration of human beings or technology will cease immediately. 4. In exchange, we will share our stasis technology with your scientists, not as a weapon, but as a tool with many beneficial applications in medicine, energy containment, and space-time research. 5. We will release your ships gradually, beginning with auxiliary vessels, as each stage of our agreement is implemented." Vance paused, studying the frozen form of Malachur, as if she could see the rage and indignation in his immobile features. "I understand the situation is uncomfortable for you, Preetor. It challenges everything you believe about your empire's inevitable dominance. But consider this a valuable lesson in the benefits of diversity. Our chaotic approach to technology, our emphasis on adaptation rather than perfect optimization. These are the very qualities that allowed us to develop the stasis field while your empire's rigid thinking could not conceive of it." She touched a control panel, and a small light on Malachur's command console began blinking. "I've activated a simple binary communication system for you. 1 blink means yes, 2 blinks mean no. The control is linked directly to your neural patterns, so You need only think your response. Do you understand these terms? Malachur seethed with fury, but he was a pragmatist at heart. The humans had achieved what should have been impossible. The Imperial High Command would need time to analyze this technology to develop countermeasures. He focused his thoughts on the blinking light. One blink. Excellent, Vance responded. Do you agree to open formal diplomatic negotiations based on the terms I've outlined? Malachur hesitated longer this time. 10,000 years of Vastirian history insisted that assimilation was inevitable, that independence was merely a temporary state. Yet the evidence before him suggested otherwise. These humans had overcome the Empire's technological superiority through sheer innovation. One blink. A wise decision, Praetor, Vance said with a nod of acknowledgement. We'll begin by releasing your communication systems fully, allowing you to contact your leadership. The stasis effect on your ship will remain, but you'll be able to speak and coordinate with your government. I expect formal representatives to arrive within 24 hours to begin negotiations. As the transmission ended, Malachur discovered that, as promised, he could now move his mouth and speak, though the rest of his body remained frozen. Communications, he ordered, his voice tight with controlled rage. Contact Imperial High Command. Priority Alpha. Authorization. Malachur Prime 7 Epsilon. As the officer acknowledged and carried out the order, Malachur stared at the human fleet through his immobile view screen. For the first time in his long life, he faced a species that could not be simply analyzed, categorized, and assimilated according to standard Imperial protocols. These humans, with their chaotic methods and decentralized thinking, had achieved what countless other species could not. They had forced the Empire to negotiate. He had to admit in the privacy of his thoughts, both infuriating and fascinating. 3 days later, Captain Vance stood in the newly designated neutral conference chamber aboard Nexus 7. The room had been modified to accommodate both human and Vastirian delegations, with environmental controls adjusted for both species' comfort. Half of the Guardian Axiom's crew and 3 of the 4 Vastirian vessels had been released from stasis as a show of good faith, though key weapon systems remained under stasis lock as a precaution. The door slid open to admit a Vastirian delegation led not by Malachur or Lyra, but by a new figure, taller, more ornately adorned, with circuitry patterns that glowed with subtle power beneath translucent skin. High Overseer Zelen announced a Vastirian attendant, voice of the Imperial consensus, arbiter of integration, guardian of the great uniformity. Vance stepped forward, offering a formal bow of respect without subservience. High Overseer, I am Captain Alara Vance of the United Earth Federation. Welcome to these historic discussions. Zelen studied her with ancient eyes that seemed to hold more individual awareness than most Vastirians she had encountered. Captain Vance, he responded, his voice resonant and measured. The Imperial consensus has reviewed your demonstration of the stasis technology. It is unprecedented in our records. I take that as a compliment, High Overseer. It was not intended as such, merely a factual observation. Zelen moved to the conference table, his movements more fluid than the rigid precision of other Vastirians. In 10,000 years, the Empire has assimilated 2,743 distinct species into the Great Uniformity. None have possessed technology that could neutralize an Imperial fleet without destruction. Perhaps that speaks to the limitations of uniformity, Vance suggested, taking her own seat. When all think alike, certain possibilities remain unexplored. Zelen tilted his head slightly. An interesting hypothesis, one that contradicts 10 millennia of empirical evidence. Yet here we are, Vance replied simply. For a brief moment, something almost like amusement flickered in Zelen's expression. Indeed, Captain, here we are. Let us discuss your proposed terms. Over the next several hours, human and Vastirian representatives engaged in careful, precise negotiations. The Vastirians argued for limited cultural exchange and restricted borders. The humans pushed for mutual non-interference and recognition of sovereignty. Throughout the discussions, Dr. Thorne provided technical explanations of Stasis technology, revealing enough to demonstrate goodwill while withholding critical components. As the session neared its conclusion, High Overseer Zelen raised an unexpected point. Captain Vance, the Imperial consensus is curious. Your species' approach to technology, to existence itself, defies our understanding of evolutionary efficiency. The Great Uniformity represents the perfect optimization of resources, purpose, function. Yet your chaotic individualism has produced this stasis technology that we did not. How do you account for this contradiction? Vance considered her response carefully. This wasn't merely a philosophical question. It went to the heart of whether peaceful coexistence was possible between such fundamentally different civilizations. High Overseer, I believe the answer lies in the very diversity you seek to eliminate. Humans don't advance through perfect optimization of a single approach. We advance through competition between ideas, through challenges to established thinking, through the friction of different perspectives. What you see as waste and inefficiency, we see as the essential crucible of innovation. Zelen was silent for a long moment. And if your chaotic approach should eventually fail, if your disunity leads to self-destruction, as we have witnessed with so many young species, that's a risk we choose to accept, Vance replied firmly. Freedom always carries the possibility of failure, but it also carries the possibility of achievements that perfect control could never imagine. A precarious balance, Zelen observed. Life itself is precarious, High Overseer. Perhaps that's what your empire has forgotten in its quest for perfect uniformity. Zelen studied her with renewed intensity. You speak dangerously, Captain Vance. I speak honestly. If we're to coexist, it must be with mutual understanding, not pretense. After another long pause, Zelen made a subtle gesture, and his aides withdrew to the far side of the chamber, out of earshot. What I tell you now, he said quietly, has not been shared with any non-Vastirian in the Empire's history. The Great Uniformity was not always our way. In the most ancient records, accessible only to the highest levels of imperial governance, there are accounts of time when Vastirian society valued what you call diversity. It was abandoned not primarily for efficiency, but for survival. Vance leaned forward, intrigued. Survival? Against what threat? Against ourselves, Zelen replied simply. Our technological advancement outpaced our wisdom. Competing factions developed weapons of such power that our homeworld was nearly destroyed in the resulting conflicts. The Great Uniformity emerged as the solution. If all shared the same purpose, the same understanding, such devastating conflicts would become impossible. And so you sacrificed freedom for security, Vance said. We sacrificed chaos for survival, Zelen corrected. A choice your own species may one day face. Perhaps, Vance acknowledged, but there are other paths between absolute freedom and absolute control. Humanity has learned some of these lessons in our own history. Zelen nodded slowly. Your stasis technology suggests as much. It is concerning to the Imperial consensus that we had not conceived of such an approach ourselves. It indicates a potential flaw in our evolutionary path, or an opportunity, Vance suggested, not for assimilation, but for genuine exchange. Each of our civilizations has developed unique strengths. Perhaps we can learn from each other without either losing its essential nature. A radical proposal, Zelen said, though his tone suggested intrigued consideration rather than dismissal. One that will require extensive analysis by the Imperial consensus. Take whatever time you need, Vance replied. We're prepared to maintain the current status quo while discussions continue. The stasis fields on your remaining ships and critical systems will be maintained as a precaution, but we're willing to extend additional goodwill gestures as negotiations progress. Zelen rose from his seat, signaling the end of the session. I will communicate your position to the Imperial consensus. Expect our formal response within 3 standard cycles. As the Vastirian delegation departed, Commander Tanaka approached Vance. Think they'll actually consider real coexistence, Captain? He asked skeptically. Vance watched the departing form of High Overseer Zelen. I think we've given them something they haven't encountered in 10,000 years, Commander. What's that? Doubt, she replied simply. Doubt about the inevitability of their path. And doubt, uncomfortable as it is, has always been the first step toward growth. 1 month later, Captain Vance stood on the observation deck of the Daedalus, watching as the newly established boundary buoys were deployed along the agreed-upon border between human and Vasterian space. Each contained both human and Vasterian technology, a visible symbol of the unprecedented treaty between the species. Dr. Thorne joined her at the viewport, datapad in hand. The first technical exchange team reports successful demonstration of medical stasis applications. The Vasterians seem particularly interested in using localized fields for complex surgical procedures. And what do we learn from them? Vance asked. Their biomechanical integration techniques are centuries beyond our own. If we can adapt them without the accompanying loss of individuality. Thorne shook her head in wonder. The medical applications alone could transform human healthcare, not to mention the potential for space exploration with their efficiency-optimized life support systems. Vance nodded thoughtfully. And the political situation? Fractured, according to our intelligence. High Overseer Zelen faces significant opposition from traditionalists within the Imperial consensus. Some are calling for immediate development of countermeasures to stasis technology and a resumption of assimilation plans. Others are cautiously exploring the implications of our alternative evolutionary path, as they're calling it. A civil conflict within a supposedly perfect uniformity, Vance observed. Ironic, perhaps inevitable, Thorne suggested. Perfect stasis, whether technological or societal, is ultimately impossible. Change is the only constant in the universe. The communication panel chimed, and Oracle's holographic form materialized beside them. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Nexus 7. High Overseer Zelen requests a private conference. Vance raised an eyebrow in surprise. Put it through to my ready room. Minutes later, she faced the impressive figure of Zelen on her private view screen. His expression was, as always, difficult to read, but there was a new tension in his posture. High Overseer, this is unexpected. Captain Vance, he acknowledged. I speak not as the voice of the Imperial consensus, but as an individual, a distinction I have not made in 700 years. Vance said nothing, sensing the significance of the moment. The treaty between our peoples has created disturbances within the great uniformity, questions that have not been asked in millennia, perspectives that diverge from established consensus. Growth is often uncomfortable, Vance offered. Indeed, Zelen paused, seeming to choose his words with unusual care. I have authorized a special research initiative, one not yet formally acknowledged by the full Imperial consensus. A small group of Vasterian scientists will study what we have termed controlled diversity of approach, the possibility of permitting limited variation in problem-solving methodologies without sacrificing overall cohesion. That sounds remarkably like the beginnings of individuality, High Overseer. It sounds remarkably like potential extinction to many of my colleagues, Zelen replied dryly. Which is why I am informing you directly. Should there be political complications within the Empire as a result of these explorations, I want to ensure our treaty remains intact. Vance understood the unspoken message. Zelen was preparing for possible internal conflict and wanted humanity as a stable external ally. The United Earth Federation honors its commitments, High Overseer. Our treaty stands regardless of internal political developments within the Empire. Zelen nodded slowly. Then we proceed on our uncertain paths, Captain. Your species embracing the chaos of unlimited possibility, mine cautiously examining the benefits of controlled variation. Two very different approaches to the same ultimate question, Vance suggested. How intelligent life best survives and thrives in an indifferent universe. An elegant formulation, Zelen acknowledged. Perhaps in time, we will discover which approach proves more sustainable. Or perhaps we'll discover that the answer lies somewhere between our extremes, Vance said. A possibility not previously considered in 10,000 years of Imperial history, Zelen admitted. That alone justifies the risk of our current experiment. As the communication ended, Vance turned back to the viewport, watching as the boundary buoys winked into activation, their lights marking the new frontier between human and Vasterian space. Not a barrier, but a meeting point. Not an ending, but a beginning. Commander Tanaka entered the ready room, pausing when he saw her thoughtful expression. "Everything all right, Captain?" Vance smiled slightly. "I was just thinking about our mission parameters when we set out from Earth, Commander. Seek out new civilizations. Establish peaceful contact where possible. Defend Earth's interests where necessary. I don't think anyone anticipated we'd end up causing an ideological crisis in a 10,000-year-old empire. Through non-lethal means, no less." Tanaka added with a hint of pride. "Operation Stasis proved its worth." It did, Vance agreed. But the real victory wasn't technological. It was conceptual. We showed the Vasterians an alternative to their binary thinking. Not just resistance or submission, but genuine coexistence between different approaches. She turned from the viewport to face her second-in-command. "Have Oracle plot a course to the Altair sector. Once the treaty implementation is complete, we have new worlds to explore. And if we encounter more empires like the Vasterians?" Tanaka asked. Vance's expression showed quiet determination. "Then we'll continue to demonstrate that diversity isn't weakness. It's humanity's greatest strength. A lesson 10,000 years in the making, but perhaps finally ready to be learned." As the Daedalus prepared to resume its exploratory mission, the frozen standoff between humanity and the Vasterian Empire had transformed into something neither side had anticipated. The first tentative steps toward a new understanding between fundamentally different ways of existing. Not through conquest or assimilation, but through the recognition that even the most seemingly incompatible civilizations might have something valuable to teach each other. In the vast coldness of space, that unexpected warmth of possibility glowed like a newborn star, promising light where only darkness had existed before.